Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
Uh,
the FAIRtax Guys. Oh, come here, Fat Albert. There you go.
that's a heavy thing right there. That's
Yeah.
like the tax code is hard to lift.
Yeah, well, people wonder how come you hold this big Rubik's Cube up at the beginning of every program. This is an 11 by 11 Rubik's Cube. Your standard one's like 3 by 3.
Right.
And, oops. A lot of people have enough difficulty with that one, but this is 11 by 11, 11 pieces across. It solves the same way as the rest of them. It just takes
Right.
longer because there's more pieces. But this is something that Ron Malero and I once, several years ago, took up to CPAC when we were able to share a FAIRtax booth with another FAIRtax volunteer. And we said, all right, I put a little sign out in front of I scrambled this up all the way. I've just got my little checkerboard pattern on here now, but I scrambled this up all the way and put a little sign in front of it that said income tax. Then it had
Right.
another slightly smaller cube, 8 by 8, I believe, that said flat tax, and I had turned a couple of the changes of it. So it had, flat tax isn't going to stay flat; it's going to get modified and changed all the time. Then it had this little 2 by 2 and says, "This is the FAIRtax." So this was a visual representation of the FAIRtax versus the income tax, and this, of course, was the income tax. And people walked by the table and wanted to pick these things up and play with them. So this has just kind of been my graphical representation of how complex and how you can turn these things and how unstable the income tax is. And it's just kind of cool, and I like Rubik's Cube, so that's what we did it.
Yeah. And that's great. And how difficult it is sometimes to explain something like that, to have the visualization represented by something that is common, in our culture, a Rubik's Cube.
And
Uh,
I actually did this too. I looked at the ratio of the number of pages in the FAIRtax bill versus the number of pages in the tax code to see what the difference is. And I found out that my little 2 by 2 cube that represented the FAIRtax, in order to actually get this up to scale, instead of 11 by 11, this would need to be like 23 by 23 to explain the difference between the FAIRtax and the income tax using the size of different Rubik's cubes. And
that's crazy.
it would take you 3 days to solve a
Yeah.
23 by 23. Again, it wouldn't be any harder. It'd just be more doing the same thing over and over more. Okay, let's keep going.
More time.
All righty. All right, now I can start a fire
Yeah,
and
there we go.
get into Congress.gov. Let us see what the Congress critters are doing to the tax code, because they get away with this because people aren't looking. We are. So
Exactly.
every week, if you want to see what your Congress critters are up to, and we've started, we're calling out the names of the sponsors of these various bills, so you can see if it's one of your guys, you can see what they're doing. And we will start today on the Senate side of the House with a bill from Senator Dick Durbin. That's a fairly famous name, Senator Dick Durbin,
Yep.
S 3847. And it says this is the Stop Corporate Inversions Act. Corporate inversions is, of course, when an American company decides that the tax environment in a foreign country is better than the one here. So these American companies actually relocate to foreign countries. That's an inverted corporation. And Senator Durbin's bill here, S 3847, wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify the rules relating to inverted corporations. And of course, if you want to stop corporate inversions, which is what the title of this bill says it wants to do, you just stop making it more advantageous for them to do business overseas than to do business in America. Flip side of that, you make it more advantageous to do business in America than anywhere else. And you could not do that any more eloquently, any more simple, and any more effectively than getting rid of the corporate income tax and replacing it with the fair tax.
Man. I'm looking at that. Stop corporate inversions. Why?
Yeah,
It's like you were trying to have your cake and eat it too. It's like, what the,
Well,
we
just be all right. We're going to punish these corporations that leave our shore and go other places. They said, no, don't punish, because that's not going to work. I mean, corporations are going to do what is most economically feasible for them, period, regardless. So if you want to stop corporate inversions and keep them here in America, you just simply make the tax environment here more attractive to them than it is someplace else. Really simple, and the fair tax will do that in spades for sure.
fades without a doubt. Without a doubt. I love it.
Okay. All righty. Let's move on a little bit here. This is next item up for bids is the Airborne Act of 2026. This is from Representative Donald Byer of Virginia, HR 7460, the Airborne Act. And it says it wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide, oh, would you believe, another tax credit to provide a
Oh,
tax to provide a tax credit for certain indoor air quality assessments and improvements, and your favorite phrase, for other purposes. So we're going to now use the tax code to try to get your indoor air assessed and improved.
I think I'm going to ask
Sometimes you
ChatGPT.
just got to laugh at the insanity of what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Chat GPT or Grok or one of those AI places how cross-reference all of the bills that have "and for other purposes" in them and find out what the other purposes may be, and ask that.
They'll be cranking on that for days.
I'll have to come back next year sometime.
Okay, this one caught my eye because it's from our representative down here in Central Florida, a young lady who has really become kind of a media star, Kat Kamek, representing Florida District 3. I am just outside of her district, but she makes a lot of noise on social media and in the regular media as well. She has got something, HR 7422, called the NEST Act, N-E-S-T. And Representative Kamek here with the NEST Act wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow, oh mercy, the establishment of first-time home buyer savings accounts. Now, question, why do you need a special class of savings account if you want to save your own money to help buy your home? I would imagine that these first-time home buyer savings accounts would be the tax deferred type where you can fund them with pre-tax dollars and not pay tax on it until you buy your home. But every time that happens, the government starts, oh, wait a minute, that's not really your money because you haven't paid tax on it yet. So I can tell you what you can and can't do with it. That's
So I'm
crazy.
not necessarily going to find it more advantageous to go shop in the market for the best deal as opposed to running this direction through the
Yes.
nest.
So Kat Kamek wants to allow the establishment of first-time home buyer savings accounts. And I don't see a whole lot of really detail here to dig into and see exactly what she's up to. But why are we having a special class of savings account with you have the fair tax? You just open a regular savings account at your credit union or your bank or wherever you want to do that. Save money, tax-free. So all of your saving is tax-free, not just ones that's saving for a specified purpose, like college or you got the health savings accounts that you've got the prepaid college plans, you've got all kinds of stuff like that where you can save pre-tax dollars. Well, let's just get rid of the tax entirely so you can save. And that is one of the things we have mentioned time and time and time again. Saving and investment are two of the things that really drive a healthy economy. And if you want to encourage a healthy economy, you encourage the things that create a healthy economy, i.e. savings and investment, by not taxing it at all. And that's what the fair tax does. The fair tax taxes spending, not saving, not investing, not dividends, not capital gains, not anything like that. You are taxed if and only if you make a retail purchase of a new product or a service at retail. That is when you pay the fair tax, and that's it. So you can save and invest tax-free for anything you want, not just a first-time home.
And but that's what I said. I said, it sounds to me like the government is getting into a market for like a savings account. Or, you used to remember the Christmas clubs that people used to have at the banks.
Oh, yeah, I do.
And then they cash it out for Christmas presents and things like that.
Yes.
I just
I
don't,
remember.
I don't,
I remember hearing commercials on WTOB when I was growing up for Piedmont Federal Savings and Loan, where they would have these Christmas clubs and stuff like that.
yeah.
Does that institution still exist up there? I don't know.
It's called Piedmont Federal Bank, and they're celebrating many, many wonderful years in business in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get them on board with the fair tax here. Let's keep going here. HR 7402 is the next item up here. This is from up here in your way. This is Representative Tim Moore, North Carolina District 14, has proposed HR 7402, the Unlocking Home Ownership Act. I didn't know that home ownership was under lock and key at the moment, but apparently this particular representative wants to unlock home ownership by amending the Internal Revenue Code. This is mentioned again. The government will tell you what you can do with your money if you haven't paid your taxes on it yet. This is to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow distributions from qualified tuition programs. You got these plans where you can save for college, tax deferred, but this bill will let you use distributions from your qualified tuition program for a first home purchase, which has nothing to do with paying tuition. But again, it has everything to do with the government telling you what you can and can't do with your money. If you haven't paid taxes on it yet, if you haven't done that, it's not really yours, and I'm going to tell you what you can do with it. And all of that insanity goes away with a fair tax. Crazy.
Gone. G-O-N-E, gone.
Okay, I got one more here. This is kind of along the similar thing. HR 7400. This is Nancy Mace up there in South Carolina. This is the Making Home Ownership Affordable Again Act. Making home ownership affordable again. And Representative Mace here wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code to exclude all gain from the sale of a principal residence or any residence which is sold to a first-time home buyer and for other purposes. So again, if you sell your house for more than you paid for it, which is likely to happen if you hold it for any length of time at all, you have to pay tax on the profit you make when you make that sale. Under the income tax system, under the fair tax, they don't care. You can sell your house to anybody you want to, first-time home buyer or not. It can be your principal residence. It can be a commercial building. Doesn't matter. If you sell something, there is no capital gains tax on any profit you may realize on any capital assets, real estate, precious metals, stocks, bonds, all of that stuff. None of that is taxed under the fair tax. You just simply, again, pay your taxes when you make a retail purchase.
Right. And there are more caveats to encouraging savings, or there's, like this particular Making Home Ownership Affordable Again Act. Everybody, that word affordability is definitely out there. I can't think of a better way to create a tsunami of affordability than implementing the fair tax. Because you immediately get a raise in your paycheck because there's no more income tax withheld. Payroll tax is not withheld instantly like that. And then you're going to end up with the prebate, which is based on the poverty level for 2, 4, head of household and all that. So folks, again, and I think I said this last week, we have to take a moment and sit down and consider all of the benefits and not just rush through it and give it some sort of cursory, it ain't gonna work. We've never had, because we've always paid income taxes on our income. We don't know what it's like to not. And,
all right.
These are things that will benefit all of us, regardless of your political persuasion.
All right, let's get back to our series on questions and objections out of Chapter 15 of the White FAIRtax book. Hopefully we can get that through and finish this up on this particular episode. And we were talking there about home ownership and all the stuff. And wouldn't you believe the next question in the book is, wait a minute, what about my home mortgage interest deduction? What happens to that under the fair tax?
Well, real estate agents say if we can't calculate a mortgage interest deduction, we'll sell fewer homes, to which the FAIRtax book by Linder and Boortz offer the obvious answer. If you think interest deductions sell homes, try doubling the interest rate. Do you expect to sell twice as many homes? Well, of course
Double
not.
the interest rate so you get twice as much a deduction. Is that going to work? And they'll say, no.
Now, in fact, real estate agents calculate interest deductions because it's a quick and easy way of showing the buyer how much more take-home pay they'll have to pay their mortgage. And after all of the calculating is done and the calculator stops smoking, 65% of taxpayers file a short form with standard deductions and do not deduct the mortgage interest anyway.
That's it. If you have an interest deduction for mortgage interest, you have to itemize deductions. And the huge majority of people don't do that because the standard deduction for most people is larger than what you could get itemizing to begin with. So you get a better deal that way. It's infinitely simpler. So, this mortgage interest deduction is going to kill the market is just somebody ain't telling the truth when they're trying to sell you that piece of garbage.
Help us, Lord.
All right.
Lobbyists have control over most of the activity in Washington anyway, and they get to speak with our representative. And we get to speak in most cases, if not all, with a member of the staff of our representatives.
All right. Well, let's keep going. I've wanted to own my own home for years. Some people will say, will the FAIRtax help that dream come true?
Sure, of course. If you're saving
Explain that.
You're saving for the down payment on a home now, right? You're saving after tax dollars. You're saving after tax dollars. Depending on your tax bracket, you might have to earn as much as $1,000 just to have $500 to put toward your dream home. Under the
when the government is skimming their share off the top of your paycheck, you have to earn more than you need to make a particular purchase, and in some cases, that's pretty considerable.
Before you get the money, the government is taking. Okay, so remember, you're taxed only when you spend with the FAIRtax. Under the plan, you'll save for your new home with untaxed dollars, right? Except what the state, is going to pile in there. You'll be saving with untaxed dollars. You'll only have to earn $500 to save $500. Remember, you're taxed only when you spend that money. That money you're putting aside for your future plans will not be taxed. Also, remember, mortgage companies are just as subject to embedded taxes as any other retailer or service provider. Once lenders start operating without tax consequences, you'll see a drop in interest rates. Like retail goods, new homes won't be any more expensive, even with a FAIRtax added. Furthermore, interest rates will be cheaper and you'll be saving money faster. Instead of earning $1,000 to get $500 with the income tax, as the example says, with the FAIRtax, you earn $500 and you have $500 to put in.
All righty, our time's getting away from me. I'm going to skip one ahead on here and ask you this one. Is it really necessary to tax services? I mean, can the FAIRtax just stick to taxing the items we buy and leave services alone?
Well, the FAIRtax not too long ago, at the time of the writing of this book, was being explained to a group of physicians in Washington, D.C. 5 minutes into the presentation, they were cheering the idea. After about 10 minutes, though, one physician suddenly realized that the tax would be levied against all goods and services. She raised her hand in alarm. You're not going to ask doctors to collect taxes from their patient, are you? Well, of course, the speaker responded. What makes you think you're so special? Okay, maybe that was a little bit flippant. According to the book, the point stands. Government ought to be neutral, period. Government ought to be neutral. We should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. You say it all the time when we look at congress.gov. Most physicians, dentists, and lawyers make good livings from their patients and clients. As they earn these livings, they're relieved of the burden of helping to collect the revenues to run the government, while their neighbors in a retail establishment are forced to do so. Indeed, the embedded cost of the IRS for medical services is about 26%.
Yeah, you're already collecting what you pay your doctor for a routine exam. Some of that ends up at the IRS as the doctor's income tax. So they are collecting tax. It's just they just don't realize it. It's kind of under the table. So yeah, the prices for services as well as the prices for goods are inflated by the income tax system. So again, the fair tax just simply replaces these embedded tax costs which are present in the prices of both goods and services.
That's right.
And so that's pretty good. So a lot of the places
For dentists,
will collect the state sales tax anyway. All those sales taxes on the state level will exempt a lot of services. It's not that big a deal. There will be point of sale software that retailers and service providers can use that will handle all this for you. So yeah, taxing services just personally makes sense. Again, if you don't tax services, then you've got to raise the rate on everything else to raise the same amount of money. And since the prices for services already contain embedded tax costs, I mean, it makes perfect sense to let the fair tax replace those tax costs as well as the embedded tax costs for products you buy.
that's right. I got one for you. Won't churches and charities suffer if charitable giving is not deductible?
Well, I will give you the one-word answer. No. The two-word answer, heck no. That's not true.
Three-word answer, heck no.
Americans do not give to charity simply to get a tax deduction. And again, we mentioned this earlier with the home interest thing. If you only can get a tax deduction if you itemize your deductions. So
Right.
if you give these big charitable contributions looking for a tax deduction, but then you take the standard deduction, you don't get the tax deduction for charitable giving. So it's just crazy. So these ideas are not new. 18th century philosopher and economist Adam Smith wrote that man's nature interests him in the fortunes of others and renders their happiness necessary for him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it, which is
Right.
that's a bit of a jumbo here. But at any back, it mentioned in 1980 the top marginal tax rate 70%. That meant that every dollar at that margin was contributed to charity was reduced the donor's taxes by 70 cents. Just 30 cents came out of his pocket. They gave $40 billion to charity that year. By 1998, they had reduced the top marginal rate to 28%, thus reducing the effectiveness of that charitable contribution. And in that case, 200 billion went up from 40 billion to 200 billion. People do not give to charity to get the tax deduction. So the idea that the getting rid of the tax deduction for charitable giving is going to just destroy charitable organizations is just not true. Not going to happen.
And one more point there. You're going to have more money, so your passion, the group of people or something that your church is doing, you're going to have more money in your pocket to contribute in that way too. And the benefit, the true benefit is you won't have to do an April 15th deadline tax return for the federal government ever again, ever.
No, people give to charitable causes because they believe in the cause.
Right.
People who go to church, people who support the Red Cross, people who support their local animal shelter. All the list of charitable causes goes on forever, but people give to those causes because they believe in them and they want to help them. The tax deduction is just a nice little side item that some of them get to take, and again, only the ones that don't itemize get to take it. But I don't know anybody that gives to charity simply because, hey, I could get a tax deduction for this, and
Standard.
it makes no sense to think that charitable giving is going to be decimated when the tax deduction for it goes away.
And as was pointed out in the book, standard deductions are generally above the threshold. In other words, they're high, that standard deduction is higher than any type of itemized deduction that you could put together with all that you would have, like your gas, mileage, your cars using your mileage for business and and work and medical expenses and things like that. You're never going to reach the threshold today. You might, but my feeling is you're not. I never have been able to. But the standard deduction is so high, you're not going to fool with itemizing your charitable or other deduction for that matter.
All right. One more quick one for you. If there are no more payroll taxes, which the FAIRtax gets rid of, how are we going to fund Social Security if we don't have payroll taxes to support it?
I lost you.
Okay, I skipped ahead a couple, but you know the answer to that anyway, and that is that the FAIRtax will get rid of those payroll taxes. We have had
Yes.
dishonest people say that that means you're going to get rid of the program. No, it's actually written into the FAIRtax bill, Medicare as well. A certain percentage of the FAIRtax collected is earmarked for those programs. So what you're actually doing is you're shifting the funding source for Social Security and Medicare from just those people who are working for a paycheck and paying those payroll taxes. Now, under the FAIRtax, everybody who buys things, or we shall say everybody whose spending rises above their poverty level, will be supporting those programs as well. And so you're going to expand the tax base for that. And
Right.
put it on a
International.
much more firm financial footing. And we won't be seeing these stories week after week after week. Social Security is going broke, and the politicians are too chicken to fix it because they don't want the political consequences of what it's going to take to fix the system. And if they really will just get rid of the income tax and expand the tax base for those things to everybody who buys things, problem solved.
Every visitor to America, the cash economy. You have drug dealers and ladies of the evening, and illegal aliens, undocumented workers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, nanu.
And live long and prosper. And so we have this complete, very simple way of immediately increasing the number of people that contributed to the Treasury on an annual basis from 158 million, give or take, workers who are paying income tax to about 300 million Americans, and maybe even more tens of millions of travelers and visitors to come to the United States for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there are a couple more questions there in chapter 15 of the book. If you want to get your hands on it and read it, we are slap out of time again, but this is going to wrap up the questions and objections series we've been doing here on FAIRtax Power Radio for the past couple of weeks. Again, we urge you to get the book if you haven't gotten one. There's two of them, actually. There's this white one, which is the first one. There's a second one that has a red cover on it as well that kind of answers some of the questions and objections that critics have raised about the FAIRtax, but infinitely readable. It's a really enjoyable read to do that. So it's
very conversational. It's very conversational.
Yep. Check that out. And hopefully next week, not for sure we can do this, but we're going to try, see if we can get John Gaver on with us to talk about the 22 points for tax reform. So, again, you'll just have to tune in next week and see if we're able to pull that off or not. But anyway, that is going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you again so much for watching, listening, sharing the videos, and telling your friends and family about it. Till we meet again, same time, same channel next week. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys. Reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less.
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead, so how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to help?
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may. Under the FAIRtax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay focused and get ahead.
Exactly.